Queen Valithra sat upon her throne of living crystal and stared at the message that had ruined her morning. The Galactic Concord, that annoying council of lesser species who pretended they had power, had made a demand. They wanted the mighty Sylvani Dominion to forge a marriage alliance with a newly discovered species. The Queen could hardly believe what she was reading. Humans, they called themselves. A race of soft, short-lived creatures from a small blue planet at the edge of the galaxy. They had only learned to travel between stars a mere 50 years ago. They were practically infants compared to the Sylvani, who had ruled their corner of space for 10,000 years. The Queen's silver skin rippled with anger as she crushed the message in her elegant hand. Her advisors stood around her throne room, their heads bowed low, waiting for her fury to pass. None of them dared to speak. "They insult me," Valithra hissed, her voice echoing through the vast chamber of purple stone and floating lights. "They dare to suggest that Sylvani blood should mix with these primitive apes?" Her chief advisor, an ancient male named Serentis, finally found his courage. "Your Majesty, the Concord believes this alliance will bring stability to the border regions. The humans have shown surprising skill in diplomacy and trade. They have already made friends with the Kreth and the Morvians." "Friends?" The Queen spat the word like poison. "The Sylvani do not need friends. We have subjects. We have conquered worlds. What have these humans accomplished that should impress me?" Serentis swallowed hard before answering. "They survived first contact with the Varax raiders and drove them back. They did so without any help from other species." This made the Queen pause. The Varax were brutal warriors who had troubled even the Sylvani. For a young species to defeat them was unexpected. But it only made her more suspicious. "They are dangerous then," she decided. "All the more reason to refuse this ridiculous demand. The Concord has made it clear that refusal will result in trade sanctions." Another advisor spoke up nervously. "Our economy depends on the trilithium routes that pass through Concord space." Valithra gripped the arms of her throne so hard that cracks appeared in the crystal. She hated being trapped. She hated having no good options. For a long moment, she sat in furious silence while her advisors trembled. Then a wicked smile crossed her face. If the Concord wanted a marriage alliance, she would give them one, but she would do it on her terms. "Bring me my daughters," she commanded. The Queen had 7 daughters, each one a potential heir to her throne. The eldest 6 were accomplished warriors, diplomats, and scholars. They were valuable pieces on the board of galactic politics. But the youngest, Alira, was different. She was quiet where her sisters were bold. She preferred reading old books to attending court functions. She asked too many questions and held too many strange ideas about equality and fairness. In short, she was an embarrassment. When her 7 daughters stood before her, Valithra looked at each one carefully. Her gaze lingered longest on Alira, who stood at the end of the line with her silver hair falling over her face. The girl always tried to hide, as if she could disappear if she stayed quiet enough. "The Galactic Concord has demanded a marriage alliance with the human species," the Queen announced. "One of you will wed their chosen representative." The 6 elder daughters gasped in horror. Wed a human? A primitive creature who probably could not even read the ancient texts. It was unthinkable. Only Alira remained silent, her purple eyes watching her mother with an expression that was hard to read. "I have decided that Alira will have this honor," Valithra declared, her smile sharp as a blade. The elder sisters relaxed with obvious relief. Some of them even looked pleased that their least favorite sibling would be sent away. But Alira showed no emotion at all. "Do you have nothing to say?" the Queen asked her youngest daughter. "What would you have me say, Mother?" Alira's voice was soft but steady. "You have made your decision. My words will not change it." Valithra felt a flash of irritation at her daughter's calm acceptance. She had hoped for tears, for begging, for some display that would amuse her. But Illyra simply stood there like a statue of pale silver. "The human delegation arrives tomorrow," the queen said coldly. "You will meet your future husband then. Try not to embarrass the Dominion too badly." The dismissal was clear. The daughters filed out of the throne room, and Valithra returned to her scheming. She would give the humans her least valuable daughter and a worthless border world. Let them think they had won a victory. In truth, she was throwing away trash and calling it a gift. The next day, the human ship arrived. It was small and ugly compared to the elegant vessels of the Sylvani. Its hull was covered in practical armor plating instead of beautiful designs. Everything about it spoke of function over form. Valithra arranged herself on her throne and prepared to receive the primitive delegation with barely hidden contempt. Her court gathered around her, ready to witness the amusing spectacle of humans trying to seem important. The throne room doors opened, and the humans walked in. There were 5 of them, all wearing simple military uniforms of dark blue. They did not bow as deeply as protocol demanded. They did not keep their eyes lowered as was proper in the presence of a queen. They walked with straight backs and steady steps, looking around at the magnificent throne room with curiosity rather than awe. At their head was a man of average height with brown skin and dark hair cut short. His face was neither handsome nor ugly, just ordinary. He had lines around his eyes that suggested he smiled often. This was Captain Marcus Cole, the one the humans had chosen as the groom. Valithra felt her contempt grow. This was the best they could offer? A common military officer with no noble blood and no impressive appearance? It was an insult wrapped inside another insult. "Your Majesty," Marcus spoke, and his voice carried clearly through the vast chamber. "I thank you for receiving us. I am Captain Marcus Cole of the United Earth Coalition." He bowed, but only slightly. And when he rose, he looked directly into the Queen's eyes. The court gasped. To meet the Queen's gaze without permission was a grave offense. Advisors and nobles shuffled nervously, waiting for Valithra to unleash her anger. But Marcus simply stood there, waiting politely, as if he had done nothing wrong. Perhaps he truly did not know he had broken protocol. Or perhaps he simply did not care. "You look at me, human," the Queen said in a dangerous voice. "Do you not know that this is forbidden?" "I apologize if I have caused offense," Marcus replied calmly. "Among my people, looking someone in the eyes shows respect and honesty. I meant no insult. Your ignorance does not excuse you. Then I ask for your forgiveness and your patience as I learn your ways," he said. "But I will not pretend to be something I am not. I am a simple man from a simple world. I cannot offer you noble blood or ancient titles. I can only offer honest service and true respect." The Queen stared at him for a long moment. She had expected groveling. She had expected the human to beg for the honor of marrying into the Sylvani royal family. Instead, he stood before her like an equal. "You speak of the marriage as if you have a choice," she said mockingly. "The Concord has arranged this union. Your feelings on the matter are irrelevant." What Marcus said next shocked everyone in the room. "With respect, Your Majesty, I will only proceed with this marriage if Princess Illyra gives her free consent. I will not take a wife who does not wish to be wed. No political arrangement is worth forcing someone into a life they do not want." Silence fell over the throne room. No one had ever spoken to Queen Valithra this way. No one had ever suggested that a princess's consent mattered in a political marriage. It was absurd. It was revolutionary. It was completely human. Valithra laughed, a cold and cruel sound. "You speak of consent as if my daughter has any say in this matter. She will do as she is told." "Then I am afraid there will be no marriage," Marcus said simply. For a terrible moment, the Queen considered having him executed. but that would create problems with the Concord. So instead, she turned to look at Alira, who had been standing silently in the shadows near the throne. "Well, daughter, this human wants your consent. Will you give it, or shall I send him home in pieces?" All eyes turned to the young princess. Alira stepped forward into the light, and for the first time, she truly looked at the human who might become her husband. She saw a man who had risked angering a powerful queen just to ensure she had a choice. She saw kindness in his eyes and strength in his stance. She saw someone who treated her as a person rather than a possession. Perhaps leaving this court would not be such a terrible fate after all. "I consent," Alira said clearly. "I will marry Captain Marcus Cole." The queen waved her hand dismissively. "Then it is done. Take her and leave. I grant you the world of Vera 7 as your domain. Try not to die too quickly in that wasteland." She was already planning her next scheme as the humans and her unwanted daughter walked out of the throne room. She had gotten rid of a problem and gained nothing of value in return. The humans would struggle on that barren border world and eventually fade into obscurity. Or so she believed. As Alira walked beside Marcus toward the human ship, he looked at her with gentle concern. Alira leaned into his embrace and smiled. She had come to this world as an unwanted princess thrown away like garbage. She had expected to live out her day. Vera 7 was everything Queen Valithra had promised it would be. The planet was harsh and unwelcoming, with rocky deserts stretching across most of its surface. The air was thin and cold. The soil was poor and refused to grow most crops. The few native plants were tough and bitter, and the local animals were small and scarce. When the human transport ship landed on this desolate world, Princess Alira looked out at the endless brown landscape and felt her heart sink. This was to be her new home? This wasteland at the edge of civilized space. But beside her, Captain Marcus Cole was grinning like a child on a holiday. "Look at all this potential," he said with excitement in his voice. "Wide open spaces, nobody telling us what to do, a chance to build something from nothing. This is exactly what we needed." Alira stared at him as if he had lost his mind. "You see potential in this dust bowl?" "I see freedom," Marcus replied. "Back on Earth, every piece of land belongs to someone. Every resource is claimed and fought over. But here, we can create our own rules. We can build a society based on what is right, not on what has always been done." She did not understand his optimism, but she found it strangely comforting. The first few months were incredibly hard. The small colony of humans and the handful of Sovani who had come with Alira struggled to find water and grow food. The portable shelters leaked when the rare rains came. Equipment broke down constantly in the harsh conditions. But through it all, Alira watched Marcus with growing amazement. He did not act like any leader she had ever known. Instead of giving orders from a comfortable office, he worked alongside the colonists with his own hands. He dug irrigation trenches until his palms bled. He carried heavy equipment until his back ached. He stayed up late solving problems and woke up early to solve more. When Alira asked him why he worked so hard, he looked confused by the question. "These are my people," he said simply. "How can I ask them to suffer if I am not willing to suffer with them?" This was a revolutionary idea for a Sylvani princess. In her mother's court, nobles never worked. They commanded others to work for them. The idea that a leader should share the struggles of common people was completely foreign. But as the weeks passed, Alira began to see the wisdom in it. The colonists loved Marcus because he was one of them. They worked harder because they knew he was working just as hard. They trusted him because he had earned that trust. And slowly, without realizing it, Alira began to change. She started by asking questions. Instead of sitting in her quarters like a proper princess, she wandered through the colony and talked to people. She asked the engineers how the water recyclers worked. She asked the farmers what crops might grow in the thin soil. She asked the doctors about human medicine and biology. No one had asked for her opinion before. Her mother had made it clear that Alira's thoughts were worthless. But here, people actually listened when she spoke. Marcus encouraged her curiosity at every turn. When she had ideas, he took them seriously. When she made mistakes, he helped her learn from them without making her feel stupid. When she succeeded at something, he celebrated with genuine joy. One evening, about 6 months after their arrival, Alira found herself sitting beside Marcus on a rocky hill overlooking their small settlement. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. For the first time, the harsh world looked almost beautiful. "Can I ask you something?" she said quietly. "Always!" "Why did you agree to this marriage? You could have refused. You could have demanded someone better than me." Marcus turned to look at her with surprise. "Better than you? What do you mean?" "I am the least of my mother's daughters," Alira explained, her voice bitter. "She gave me to you because I have no value. I am not beautiful like my sisters. I am not clever or strong or talented. I am the one nobody wanted." For a long moment, Marcus said nothing. Then he reached out and gently took her hand. "Do you know what I see when I look at you?" he asked. "I see someone who was brave enough to leave everything she knew for an uncertain future. I see someone who works hard every day to learn and grow. I see someone who cares about the people around her, even when she does not have to. I see someone with a kind heart and a curious mind." Alira felt tears forming in her eyes. No one had ever spoken to her like this. "Your mother may have thought she was punishing you by sending you here," Marcus continued. "But I think she gave me a gift. She just does not realize it yet." That night, something changed between them. It was not love yet, but it was the beginning of something real. Two strangers from different worlds had started to become partners, and perhaps something more. As the months turned into years, Vera 7 began to transform. Word spread through the galaxy that the human Sylvani colony welcomed anyone who wanted to build a new life. Refugees from dozens of species started arriving. Some were escaping war. Some were fleeing persecution. Some were simply looking for a place where they would be judged by their actions rather than their birth. Marcus and Alira welcomed them all. A Kreth engineer named Zix arrived with nothing but the clothes on his back and a head full of brilliant ideas. In the Sylvani Dominion, the Kreth were considered inferior and were often used as slaves. But on Vera 7, Zix was given tools and resources and the freedom to create. Within a year, he had designed irrigation systems that tripled their agricultural output. He built wind turbines that provided clean energy. He invented a water purification device that worked better than anything the Sylvani had ever produced. "How is this possible?" Alira asked in amazement. "The Kreth are supposed to be a simple people." Marcus just smiled. "Your mother's empire told you the Kreth were simple because it was convenient to believe that. It is easy to enslave people if you convince yourself they are less than you. But give anyone freedom and opportunity, and you might be surprised at what they can do." A Morvian healer named Thessaly arrived next. The Morvians had been conquered by the Sylvani Dominion 2 centuries ago, and most of them lived in poverty on their occupied homeworld. But Thessaly had escaped and wandered the galaxy looking for somewhere she belonged. She found it on Vera 7. Her knowledge of medicine saved many lives, including Marcus's when he was wounded defending the colony from raiders. When Alira thanked her for saving her husband's life, Thessaly looked at her with wonder. "A Sylvani princess is thanking me?" she said in disbelief. "Your people destroyed my world. Your mother killed millions of my kind." "I am not my mother," Alira replied firmly. "And this is not the Dominion. Here, we are all equal. Here, We are all family." These words spread like wildfire among the refugee communities. The princess who was not her mother. The colony where everyone was equal. The world where your past did not determine your future. More and more people came to Varith 7, and the colony grew into a town. And the town grew toward becoming a city. Marcus and Alira created something they called the Compact, a set of laws that would govern their growing community. They wrote it together over many long nights, debating and discussing and sometimes arguing. The Compact was simple but revolutionary. It said that every person had the same rights regardless of their species. It said that leaders would be chosen based on their abilities, not their bloodlines. It said that everyone would contribute according to their skills and receive according to their needs. Young Sylvani nobles began to visit out of curiosity. What they found shocked them. They saw humans and Kreth and Morvians and a dozen other species working together as equals. They saw a princess who wore simple clothes and got her hands dirty. They saw a society that was poor in material wealth but rich in hope. Some of these young nobles returned home to the Dominion, but others stayed. They stayed because they had found something on Varith 7 that did not exist in their mother's empire, purpose. One such noble was a young male named Talvanis, the son of a powerful lord. He had come to mock the primitive human colony, but he ended up falling in love with the way they lived. "In my father's house, I was nothing but a spare heir," he told Marcus. "I had no purpose except to exist in case my older brother died. But here, you let me teach. You let me build. You let me matter." Word of these defections reached Queen Valithra's ears, and she dismissed them as foolish young people going through a phase. They would come to their senses eventually. They would realize that the old ways were superior. She did not realize that a fire was spreading. She did not see that her unwanted daughter and the common human she had married were building something that would threaten everything she had built. In her arrogance, Queen Valithra looked away from Vareth 7 and focused on her political games with other noble houses. It was a mistake that would cost her everything. On the former wasteland world, Alera stood beside Marcus and looked out at the thriving community they had built together. The harsh desert was slowly turning green as their agricultural projects succeeded. Buildings of human and Sylvani design stood side by side. Children of different species played together in the streets. "We did this," she whispered in amazement. "We actually did this." Marcus put his arm around her and pulled her close. "No," he said gently. "We started it, but everyone here helped build it. That is what makes it special. It does not belong to us. It belongs to all of them." 5 years had passed since Princess Alira left her mother's court. The barren world of Varith 7 was no longer barren. It had been renamed Varith Prime, and it had become one of the most remarkable places in the galaxy. What had once been a worthless dust bowl was now a thriving hub of trade, innovation, and hope. Ships from dozens of species landed every day, bringing new settlers and carrying away goods produced by the diverse population. The markets buzzed with activity as Kreth engineers sold their inventions, beside Morvian healers offering their services. Human traders laughed and bargained with Sylvani merchants who had abandoned the rigid ways of the Dominion. At the center of it all stood the Council Hall, a building constructed from stone quarried on Varith Prime, and designed by a committee of architects from 7 different species. It was neither human nor Sylvani nor Kreth. It was something entirely new, a symbol of what different peoples could create when they worked together. Inside this hall, Elira presided over the weekly assembly. She no longer wore the flowing gowns of a Sylvani princess. Instead, she dressed in practical clothing suitable for a working leader. Her silver hair was tied back, and her hands bore the calluses of honest labor. The water distribution project in the Eastern District is complete. a Kreth engineer reported. Every family now has access to clean water. The new medical center will be ready next month, added the Morvian healer Thessaly. We have trained 40 new doctors from 12 different species. Trade revenues are up 30% from last quarter, announced the human economist. Our industrial output is now comparable to some mid-tier Dominion worlds. Alira listened to each report with genuine interest and asked thoughtful questions. She had learned so much in the past 5 years. She had learned about economics and engineering, agriculture and architecture, medicine and manufacturing. But most importantly, she had learned about leadership. True leadership was not about commanding others. It was about serving them. It was about listening more than speaking, about lifting others up rather than pushing them down. Marcus had taught her this, and she had become a devoted student. After the assembly ended, Alira walked through the streets of the capital city. People greeted her warmly, not with the fearful bows of subjects before a queen, but with the friendly waves of neighbors. Children ran up to show her drawings they had made. Shopkeepers offered her samples of their food. Workers paused their tasks to share jokes and stories. This was what her mother would never understand. Alira was loved not because people feared her, but because they knew she genuinely cared about them. But dark clouds were gathering on the horizon. Back in the Sylvani Dominion, Queen Valithra had finally started paying attention to the world she had given away. Reports were reaching her ears, and she did not like what she heard. 3 of her vassal lords had defected, not through war or conquest, but through simple choice. Lord Cassarian, Lord Methwin, and Lady Varentis had taken their households and their followers and simply left. They had traveled to Vareth Prime and sworn allegiance to the Compact. This is impossible, Valithra snarled at her advisors. No one leaves the Dominion. It has never happened in all our history. It is happening now, Your Majesty, Serentis replied nervously. And I fear it will continue. The younger generation has heard stories of Vareth Prime. They speak of it as if it were paradise. Paradise? The Queen laughed bitterly. That dusty rock where my worthless daughter plays at government. Forgive me, Majesty, but it is no longer a dusty rock. Reports indicate that Vareth Prime has become one of the most prosperous colonies in the sector. Their technology rivals our own. Their population grows larger every day. Valithra rose from her throne and paced the chamber like a caged predator. How had this happened? She had thrown Alira away like garbage, and somehow that garbage had grown into a flower that threatened to overshadow her entire garden. There is more, Serentis continued reluctantly. The slaves are talking. What do you mean, the slaves are talking? They whisper your daughter's name in the factories and the fields. They tell each other that there is a place where Sylvani treat them as equals. They dream of escape. The Queen's silver skin flushed with rage. Then we will give them something else to dream about. Increase the punishments for disobedience. Make examples of anyone who speaks of Vareth Prime. But even as she gave these orders, Valithra knew they would not be enough. Fear could control people for a time, but it could not compete with hope. And her daughter was giving hope to everyone who had none. She needed to see this for herself. Queen Valithra summoned Alira to the palace. The message was formal and cold. The princess would present herself before the throne and explain her activities. When the summons arrived on Vareth Prime, Marcus urged his wife to refuse. It could be a trap, he warned. Your mother has never forgiven you for succeeding. She might be planning to arrest you, or worse. But Alira shook her head. I cannot hide from her forever. And besides, I am curious to see how she reacts when she sees what I have become. The frightened little girl she threw away no longer exists. Then I am coming with you. I would have it no other way. They traveled to the Sylvani homeworld together, accompanied by a small honor guard of mixed species. As their ship approached the glittering capital city, Alera felt old fears trying to creep back into her heart. But she pushed them away. She was not the princess who had left this place 5 years ago. She was Alera of Vareth Prime, and she was afraid of nothing. The throne room looked exactly as she remembered. The living crystal thrones still pulsed with soft light. The purple stone walls still stretched up to impossible heights. The floating lights still drifted through the air like lazy stars. But Alera saw it with different eyes now. Before, she had seen grandeur and power. Now, she saw waste and arrogance. The resources spent on this one room could have fed thousands. Queen Valithra sat upon her throne, looking exactly as she had 5 years ago. The Sylvani aged slowly, and the queen appeared almost identical to Alera's memories. But there was something different in her eyes, a flicker of uncertainty that had not been there before. "Daughter," the queen spoke the word without warmth. "You have come." "I have, mother." "And you brought your pet human, I see." Marcus stood beside Alera with his back straight and his gaze steady. He looked into the queen's eyes just as he had on their first meeting. "I am Princess Alera's husband," he replied calmly, "and the co-founder of Vareth Prime. I go where she goes." Valithra's lip curled with disdain, but she said nothing more about him. Instead, she focused all her attention on her daughter. "You have caused me a great deal of trouble," the queen said. 3 of my vassals have abandoned their duties to join your little experiment. My slaves speak of rebellion. The other noble houses are starting to ask questions." "Those vassals came to us by their own choice," Alera replied. "We did not steal them. We simply offered them a different way of living, and they preferred it to yours." "A different way?" Valithra laughed. "You mean chaos? You allow Kreth and Morvians to hold positions of power. You let commoners vote on laws. You have abandoned everything that makes us Sylvani." "No, mother. I have discovered what we could have been all along if we were not so determined to dominate others. Our people are not weaker for treating others as equals. They are stronger. Our society is not poorer for sharing power. It is richer." The queen rose from her throne and descended the steps to stand before her daughter. They were the same height now, though Valithra's presence had always seemed so much larger. "You speak as if you have accomplished something meaningful," the queen hissed. "But what have you really built? A single colony on a border world. I control hundreds of worlds, billions of subjects." "You control them through fear," Alera replied without flinching. "I lead mine through trust. Which do you think will last longer?" For a long moment, mother and daughter stared at each other. The tension in the throne room was thick enough to cut. Then Queen Valithra made the decision that would seal her fate. "You have embarrassed this throne," she said coldly. "You have stolen my vassals and corrupted my people with dangerous ideas. I gave you permission to exist on that worthless world, but I see now that was a mistake." "What are you saying, mother?" "I am saying that Vareth Prime is now in rebellion against the Dominion. I am declaring war on your pathetic colony. You will surrender and return everything you have stolen, or I will reduce your world to ash." Alera felt Marcus's hand slip into hers. She squeezed it tightly, drawing strength from his presence. "Then you will have war, mother," she said, her voice steady despite the fear in her heart. "But I warn you, you do not know what you are starting. The people of Vareth Prime will not surrender. They have tasted freedom, and they will die before they give it up." "Then they will die," the queen said dismissively. "Remove yourself from my sight. You have until the turn of the season to prepare for your destruction." Alera and Marcus walked out of the throne room together. Behind them, Queen Valithra began summoning her war council. Neither mother nor daughter knew that this conflict would change the galaxy forever. One of them would fall, and the other would rise. But which one would triumph? Asterisk on the orbital station, Marcus watched the enemy retreat. Beside him, Elira was weeping with relief and joy. They had. The HFY War fleet was magnificent and terrifying. 500 warships moved through space in perfect formation. Their hulls gleamed with the iridescent coating that marked them as Dominion vessels. Their weapons were the finest in the quadrant, capable of destroying cities from orbit. Their crews were trained warriors who had conquered dozens of worlds. Queen Valithra watched the fleet assemble from the command deck of her flagship, the Eternal Dominance. She felt confident in her victory. How could a ragged colony of refugees and misfits stand against such power? Admiral Zaranthos, she addressed her fleet commander. How long until we reach Varith Prime? 3 days, Your Majesty. The colony will have no chance to prepare adequate defenses in that time. Excellent. I want my daughter captured alive, if possible. I want her to watch as I tear down everything she has built. Then she will spend the rest of her days in a cell, knowing that her foolish experiment has failed. The admiral bowed and went to oversee the fleet's departure. On Varith Prime, the people were preparing for war. The council hall was filled with representatives from every species in the colony. Fear was visible on many faces, but there was determination too. These people had built something worth fighting for, and they would not surrender it without a struggle. Marcus stood before the assembly and spoke with calm authority. The Dominion fleet outnumbers us 10-1, he said honestly. Their ships are bigger, faster, and more powerful than anything we have. By every measure, we should lose this war. Murmurs of worry rippled through the crowd, but Marcus held up his hand for silence. But we have advantages they do not understand. We have engineers who have invented weapons they have never seen. We have fighters who will never retreat because they are defending their homes. We have allies they do not expect. And most importantly, we have something to fight for beyond the glory of a tyrant. Zix the Kreth engineer stepped forward. We have been preparing for this possibility since the defections began. The Queen has underestimated us at every turn, and we have used that time wisely. What have you created? Elira asked. Zix displayed a holographic image of strange devices that looked nothing like traditional weapons. We have converted our asteroid mining equipment into weapons platforms, he explained. These devices can hurl rocks at incredible speeds using magnetic acceleration. They are crude compared to HFY beam weapons, but they are cheap, numerous, and powerful enough to crack a warship's hull. Another engineer stepped forward. We have also seeded the approach routes with gravitic mines. When the Dominion fleet drops out of faster-than-light travel, they will find themselves in a maze of explosive surprises. Thessaly, the Morvian healer, spoke next. Our medical teams have developed battlefield trauma systems based on combined human and Morvian techniques. We can save soldiers that the Dominion would leave to die. Every warrior we save can fight again. Marcus nodded with pride. This was the power of inclusion. Every species had brought something unique to Varith Prime, and together they had created innovations that none could have managed alone. But we cannot defeat 500 warships with mining equipment and mines alone, an elderly HFY counselor pointed out. We need reinforcements. I know, Marcus replied, and I have sent a message to Earth. The room fell silent. Earth was far away, on the other side of the galaxy. The human homeworld had its own problems and its own concerns. Would they really send help to a distant colony? My people have a tradition, Marcus continued. When one of us is threatened, we stand together. I cannot promise that Earth will send help, but I believe they will. And I believe they will arrive in time. There was nothing more to say. The preparations continued through the night and the next 2 days. Every civilian who could fight was given a weapon and training. Every ship that could fly was armed and armored. The orbital defenses were activated, and the ground troops took their positions. On the third day, the Sylvani fleet arrived. Admiral Zaranthos ordered his ships to drop out of faster-than-light travel at a safe distance from the planet. But the first surprise was waiting for them. Gravitic mines exploded among the fleet like angry stars. A dozen ships were destroyed before they even knew they were under attack. The perfect formation scattered as captains tried to avoid the hidden dangers. "What is this?" Queen Valithera demanded angrily. "How do they have mines in open space?" "They must have seeded them in advance, Your Majesty. We did not anticipate this." "Anticipate it now. Clear a path and continue the attack." The Dominion fleet regrouped and began sweeping the mines with their sensors. It took precious hours, and more ships were lost, but eventually they created a safe corridor toward Varith Prime. When they finally approached the planet, they found the second surprise waiting. Hundreds of small craft launched from the orbital stations. They were not proper warships, but converted mining vessels and cargo haulers, each one carrying Krath magnetic accelerators. They swarmed toward the Dominion fleet like angry insects. "Destroy those gnats," the Queen ordered contemptuously. But the small ships were fast and nimble. They darted between the massive Dominion warships, firing their rock cannons at close range. The crude weapons should not have worked against military-grade armor, but the Krath engineers had done their calculations well. Focus strikes against weak points, cracked hulls, and disabled weapons. For every small ship the Dominion destroyed, 2 more seemed to take its place. The pilots knew they were outmatched, but they fought with the desperation of people, defending everything they loved. Marcus commanded the defense from the main orbital station. Alera stood beside him, directing the Sylvani defectors who had chosen to fight for their new home. "We are losing ships too fast," she reported grimly. "At this rate, we cannot hold for more than a few hours." "We only need to hold a little longer," Marcus replied. "Help is coming." "How can you be so certain?" Before Marcus could answer, the sensors detected a new contact. Then another. Then dozens more. Ships were dropping out of faster-than-light travel behind the Dominion fleet. They were not elegant like Sylvani vessels. They were blocky and practical, bristling with weapons and armor. They were human warships. 72 ships of the United Earth Coalition had crossed half the galaxy to defend Varith Prime. The lead ship broadcast a message on all frequencies. The voice was that of Admiral Sarah Chun, commander of the Earth Expeditionary Force. "Attention, Sylvani Dominion Fleet. Varith Prime is under the protection of the United Earth Coalition. You are ordered to withdraw immediately. Any hostile action will be met with overwhelming force." Queen Valithera stared at the tactical display in disbelief. Humans had come to fight for her daughter? These primitives dared to threaten the mighty Sylvani Dominion? They are bluffing, she decided. Their ships are primitive and few. Destroy them along with the colony. Admiral Zaranthos hesitated. "Your Majesty, we did not expect to fight humans. Our fleet has already taken losses from the mines and the small craft. Perhaps we should reconsider. I will not retreat from humans." The Queen screamed, "Attack! Destroy them all!" What followed was the most brutal space battle the sector had seen in centuries. The human ships were indeed less advanced than Sylvani vessels. Their weapons were weaker, their shields thinner, their engines slower. But the humans did not care about the odds. They threw themselves into the fight with a ferocity that shocked the Dominion commanders. A human cruiser rammed a Sylvani battleship, destroying both vessels. Human pilots ejected from crippled fighters and continued fighting in their spacesuits. Human ships that should have retreated kept firing until they literally fell apart. Why do they not surrender? Admiral Zaranthos demanded. Their ships are dying. Any rational species would negotiate. But the humans were not being rational. They were being human. They were fighting for something they believed in, and that made them more dangerous than any weapon. The battle raged for hours. Ships exploded like fireworks against the stars. Thousands died on both sides. The space around Vareth Prime became a graveyard of twisted metal and frozen bodies. But slowly, impossibly, the tide began to turn. The combination of human determination, Kreth ingenuity, Morvian medicine, and the fierce loyalty of the defenders proved too much for the Dominion fleet. Ship after ship fell. Admiral Zaranthos was killed when his command vessel was destroyed by a coordinated strike. Queen Valithra watched her grand fleet crumble around her. This could not be happening. She was the ruler of hundreds of worlds. She could not be defeated by humans and refugees and her own rejected daughter. But she was being defeated. The evidence was undeniable. "Your Majesty, we must retreat," her remaining officers pleaded. "The battle is lost." "No, I will not." An explosion rocked the Eternal Dominance. Alarms screamed throughout the ship. The flagship had been hit by multiple impacts, and its main engines were failing. "Hull breach on decks 7 through 12. We are venting atmosphere." Queen Valithra finally accepted the impossible truth. She had lost. She had brought the largest fleet in her history to destroy a single colony, and she had been beaten. "Sound the retreat," she whispered. "All ships fall back." The remnants of the Dominion fleet fled. Of the 500 ships that had arrived, fewer than 200 escaped. The rest were debris drifting through space. The aftermath of the battle shook the galaxy to its core. News of the Dominion's defeat spread faster than starlight. A single colony had beaten back the most powerful fleet in the quadrant. Refugees and slaves, led by a rejected princess and a human soldier, had humiliated Queen Valithra. Within weeks, everything began to change. The Galactic Concord summoned an emergency session. Representatives from hundreds of worlds gathered to discuss what had happened. The Sylvani Dominion had launched an unprovoked war against a peaceful colony. They had violated treaties and threatened the stability of the entire region. Queen Valithra sent her diplomats to defend her actions, but no one wanted to hear excuses. The footage of the battle had been broadcast across the galaxy. Everyone had seen the human ships fighting to the death. Everyone had seen the refugee pilots sacrificing themselves for their home. Everyone had seen hope triumph over tyranny. The Sylvani Dominion must face consequences for this aggression, the Kreth representative declared. For too long, they have bullied and conquered without punishment. "We demand reparations for the Morvian people," added another delegate. "The Dominion has enslaved our kind for centuries. This cannot continue." One by one, the voices rose against Queen Valithra. Species who had been silent for generations suddenly found their courage. The Dominion's power had always rested on fear, but that fear was crumbling. Back in her palace, Queen Valithra faced a different kind of revolt. Her own nobles were abandoning her. Lord after lord withdrew their support, claiming they had never approved of the war. Some fled to Vareth Prime. Others simply locked themselves in their estates and refused to answer her summons. Even her closest advisors began to distance themselves. Sarantis, who had served her for 500 years, resigned his position and disappeared. The palace halls, once filled with scheming courtiers, became empty and silent. "This is temporary," Valithra insisted to the few who remained loyal. "The Concord will forget. My nobles will return. I have weathered storms before. But this was no ordinary storm. This was a hurricane of change that would sweep away everything she had built." The final blow came from an unexpected direction. 3 of her eldest daughters appeared before her throne. They were not there to offer support. They were there to deliver an ultimatum. "Mother," spoke Selviria, the eldest and heir to the throne, "we have consulted with the remaining loyal houses. We have spoken with the Concord representatives. We have seen which way the winds are blowing. What is the meaning of this? Valithra demanded. You must abdicate, Selvaria said flatly. Immediately. The Dominion cannot survive if you remain on the throne. Your presence guarantees sanctions, isolation, and eventual collapse. The Queen stared at her daughters in disbelief. They were betraying her? Her own blood? You would remove me? Your own mother? You brought this upon yourself, another daughter replied. You threw Alira away because you thought she was worthless. You underestimated the humans. You started a war you could not win. Your pride has destroyed us. Valithra wanted to rage, to threaten, to punish these ungrateful children. But she looked around at her empty throne room and realized she had no power left. Her fleet was shattered. Her nobles were gone. Even her own family had turned against her. Who would take my place? She asked bitterly. The Concord has made their recommendation, Selvaria answered. They want Alira. If Valithra had been capable of laughter anymore, she would have laughed. Her least valuable daughter, the one she had thrown away like garbage, was now being offered the crown. The irony was so perfect, it was almost painful. And if I refuse to abdicate? Then we will remove you by force. The choice is yours, Mother. Go quietly with some dignity, or be dragged from your throne in chains. Either way, your reign is over. Queen Valithra sat in silence for a long moment. She had ruled for 300 years. She had conquered worlds and crushed rebellions. She had been feared and respected across the galaxy. And now she had nothing. Very well, she whispered. I abdicate. May Alira choke on the throne she never wanted. On Vareth Prime, Alira received the news with shock and disbelief. They want me to be queen? She asked Marcus. I never wanted to rule the Dominion. I never wanted any of this. I know, her husband replied gently. But think of what you could do with that power. Think of all the people you could help. I am not qualified. I am no politician. I am just a woman who wanted to build a better life for her people. That is exactly why you should accept. The Dominion needs someone who cares about the people, not about power. You could change everything. Alira struggled with the decision for days. She consulted with her council, with the refugees who had followed her, with the human allies who had saved them. Everyone said the same thing. She was the right person for this moment. Finally, she made her choice. She would accept the crown, but only if the Dominion agreed to adopt the principles of the compact. No more slavery. No more birthright rule. No more conquering neighbors. The empire would become a federation of free peoples working together. The negotiations took months. The old guard resisted every change. They screamed that tradition was being destroyed, that the Sylvani way of life would end. But the younger generation embraced the new ideas hungrily. They had grown up hearing stories of Vareth Prime. They wanted the freedom and opportunity that Alira represented. Slowly, vote by vote and compromise by compromise, the new Dominion took shape. On the day of her coronation, Alira stood before a crowd that included every species in the galaxy. She wore a simple silver gown instead of the elaborate robes of traditional queens. Marcus stood beside her, a human consort to a Sylvani empress, a sight that would have been unthinkable just a few years ago. I do not take this crown as a ruler, Alira declared to the assembled multitudes. I take it as a servant. My power comes from your trust, and I will spend every day earning that trust. Together, we will build a civilization based on hope instead of fear, on cooperation instead of conquest, on the belief that every person has value regardless of their birth. The cheers shook the palace walls. For the first time in Sylvani history, a coronation was celebrated not with fearful silence, but with genuine joy. One person did not celebrate. In her private chambers, stripped of all power and guarded by soldiers who had once served her, Queen Valithra sat alone. She had requested an audience with her daughter, and Alira had agreed to come. When the new empress entered the room, Valithra barely recognized her. This confident woman with kind eyes and a gentle smile. Was this really the shy, worthless daughter she had thrown away? "Mother," Alira said simply. "Your Majesty," Valithra replied, and the words tasted like ashes in her mouth. "You wanted to see me?" The former queen took a deep breath. "I wanted to understand. How did this happen? I gave you to those humans as an insult. I sent you to a worthless world to be forgotten. And yet here you are, wearing my crown, ruling my empire. How?" Alira sat down across from her mother. "Do you really want to know?" "Yes. The humans taught me something that the Silvani never understood. They taught me that power is not about domination. True power comes from lifting others up, from building communities where everyone can thrive. You spent 300 years crushing people under your heel, and the moment you showed weakness, they abandoned you. I spent 5 years helping people become their best selves, and they will follow me to the end of the universe." Valithra shook her head slowly. "That sounds like weakness to me. Then you still do not understand." Alira leaned forward. "Let me ask you something, Mother. When you look back on your life, what have you built that will last? Your conquests will be undone. Your monuments will crumble. The fear you inspired will fade. In 1,000 years, no one will remember Queen Valithra except as a cautionary tale. And you think they will remember you differently? I think they will remember Verith Prime. They will remember the place where outcasts and refugees built something beautiful together. They will remember that hope conquered fear. And maybe, just maybe, they will remember the humans who taught us how to be better." Marcus entered the room and stood beside his wife. Valithra looked at him, this common-born human, who had somehow dismantled her entire empire without ever raising a weapon in conquest. "What are you people?" she breathed, echoing a question she had never been able to answer. Marcus considered her words seriously. "We are hopeful, Your Majesty. Relentlessly, stubbornly hopeful. We believe that tomorrow can be better than today. And we tend to share that belief with everyone we meet." He took Alira's hand, and together they walked out of the chamber. Valithra sat alone in the silence, surrounded by the ruins of everything she had believed. In the years that followed, the galaxy transformed. The new Silvani Federation became a beacon of progress and cooperation. Slavery was abolished across dozens of worlds. Species that had been enemies for millennia learned to work together. And at the center of it all stood Empress Alira and her human consort Marcus, proof that love and hope could conquer anything. On 100 worlds, children of every species looked up at the stars and whispered a word. They had learned from humanity, a word that had changed everything. Tomorrow. The word held all the promise of a better future, and that future was finally beginning.